My name is Chiara Berzotti. I work for European Bioplastics, but today I'm here as a representative of the project ReBioCycle. We got 3 projects that are actually supporting this kind of series of talks. The topic is bioplastic recycling, and we started this series in September, and we're going to continue the first round until March next year. So we're trying to find ways to discover different topics related to recycling of bioplastics. And today we will talk with the specific 2 speakers on the design for recycling. So now, before I start and before I give also and pass the floor to the different speakers, this is just a disclaimer. So this is a saying that basically this format is funded by the European Union, and the views and opinions expressed are, however, those of the authors only, and do not necessarily reflect those of the European Union or of the CBE, and so on. So they're not responsible for this. So it's just a normal disclaimer that we use in this format, just to let you know. And here, the structure of the talk, if you've been here before, I think I've seen many faces that have been here before. We got 1 moderator, that's me. We got 2 speakers, Lorette Du Preez and Laura Tirkkonen-Rajasoalo. The presentations will be recorded, so if you're missing a few minutes, or if you're arriving late, or you would like to share this with your colleagues, that's fine with us. You will be sent the links. The Q&A will not be recorded, so we will remove it from the final version of this video. Part of the presentation will be shared with you, and partly not, because it's confidential information, that's normal. But you will receive also a short summary about what we have been discussing here during this session. So now, just a few reminders. If you go to the website of ReBioCycle, rebiocycle.eu, under events, you will see that there are new events that are planned. So on the 13th of January, we will be talking about the PLA sorting model in the PROSPA project, which is one of the twins projects of this project, ReBioCycle. 3rd of February, we will talk about microbial recycling for bioplastics with PAX materials. And on the 3rd of March, we will be talking about the label OK Recycled, a certification scheme label for recycling that has been recently brought to the market by TÜV Austria. So a few housekeeping rules. I think you're very, very well disciplined here. That's very nice. AI tools are not welcome, so we will try to remove them from this talk. I would like you to check your microphones. If they're on mute, that's fine with us. If your cameras are switched off, it's even better. We will be taking questions after the talk, but during the delivery of the talk, you can also type your questions in the chat. We will answer them after the delivery of the talks during the Q&A. And if you would like to ask questions after the end of the talks, you can raise your hand, so we will keep track of the people, who's first, who's next. Or you can use the chat as well, so we'll try to keep an eye on what's happening into the chat as well. Okay, so today my colleagues that are presenting are Lorette Du Preez from European Bioplastics, and Laura Tirkkonen-Rajasoalo from Sulapac. And there will be first Lorette, and then Laura, and then again Lorette, explaining you a little bit about the design for recycling criteria for the bioplastic packaging.
Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Laura Du Preez from European Bioplastics. I'm the Head of Sustainability and Environmental Affairs. I'll take you through a little bit of information on the design for recycling that I think a lot of you are working on it. So just for information, the topics that I will talk about is the design for recycling, or DFR, what's all the fuss about. We'll speak with Laura in a moment. So agenda topic number 2, basically, I will hand over to Laura to speak about her own experience in her company with recycling and the path of design for recycling and PPWR. We'll look in more detail at what the DFR is, and also we'll look at what we have been doing so far and the road ahead. So firstly, what is all this fuss about? So it really has been caused by the PPWR, the Packaging Waste Regulation, which is a new regulation that was entering into force in February of 2025. And the PPWR aims to overhaul really the life cycle of packaging, from design through production, placing on the market, reuse, recycling, and waste management. So it's a very, very large regulation that I'm sure you're all aware of. And the main objectives of the PPWR are reducing packaging waste, ensuring recyclability of packaging, increasing the recycled content in packaging, and harmonizing rules across the EU. So that is the PPWR as a big regulation. Now, how does this affect bioplastics? So firstly, as a reminder, bioplastics can be bio-based and or biodegradable. So you have bioplastics that are only bio-based, some are only biodegradable, and some are both. And in terms of biodegradable, you also have the compostable plastics used basically in industrial or home composting. So the PPWR looks after reusing, reduction, minimization, and recycling, among other things. And this applies to bioplastics in the same way as it would apply to any other material or any other non-bioplastic packaging. However, there are some things in the PPWR that are very specific for bioplastics. So there is an Article 8 of the PPWR that talks about bio-based plastic. It gives a support, and it's planning, the Commission is planning to have a report on the sustainability criteria for bio-based feedstock, and also on setting targets for the use of bio-based feedstock. So this is something which is very special to the bio-based part of bioplastics or of the plastics industry, packaging industry. And then for compostable plastic, also there's a special space in Article 9 where the PPWR actually provides for some mandatory compostable products. For example, fruit stickers, tea bags, coffee pads. This is to be eventually going into organic recycling, so industrial composting, for example. And then Article 9 also gives the possibility to member states to decide, I think it's an 18-month window to decide on other applications that they want also to be, or want to allow to be compostable. Now, the remainder of the packaging made from biodegradable plastics must be recycled. So must be recycled in material recycling. So just to emphasize this point, so if the plastic is not going to be composted, not going to be allowed to be composted in Europe or in your country, it must be recycled using material recycling. For us, material recycling can be mechanical recycling, or it can be chemical or another advanced type of recycling, but it means not organic recycling. So that's the difference. And although, of course, as European Bioplastics, we were aware of it, many of the companies also on this call were fully aware of it. It's clear that it was a wake-up call for the industry, and many companies were caught completely unaware of this fact. So a little bit more on design for recycling and some deadlines. So the packaging, the relevant packaging, I say those relevant because the PPWR is a big regulation, has some exceptions and so on, for example, for hygienic use or medical use or innovations. But basically, packaging must be designed for material recycling so that it can feed back into the recycling system. And it has to yield a high quality secondary raw material. The PPWR is going to introduce performance grades that they call A, B, C, etc. And they will ban packaging that will be below a certain grade at a certain year. And this is based on how recyclable the packaging is according to the design for recycling criteria has to be established. Now, Article 6, paragraph 4 of the PPWR more specifically says, and I read, by 1st of January 2028, the Commission shall, after taking into consideration standards developed by the European Standardisation Organizations, adopt delegated acts in accordance with Article 64 to supplement this regulation by establishing A, design for recycling criteria and recyclability performance grades on the basis of the predominant material, etc. So I won't read the whole part, but this is really which is relevant, the part which is relevant to design for recycling criteria. Now, there's going to be a delegated act in place as from the 1st of January 2028. So that's a hard-coded date in the PPWR. Now, for that, in December of last year, the Commission has asked CEN, so the standardization body in Europe, to co-develop design for recycling criteria for paper, glass, etc., but also for biodegradable plastics. So these are the categories mentioned in the PPWR. They gave in this letter a deadline for the end of 2025 for biodegradable plastic and these other products. For other plastics that are covered under a mandate, that was sent out in 2022. I'm not sure if I have the right number actually, but for the other plastics, so more the conventional plastics, they had a deadline in this letter of August 2025, which I believe has moved out slightly. Now, I will, before I go into more detail on this design for recycling criteria and what is being done and what needs to be done, I will ask and hand over to Laura, who is also a member of European Bioplastics, to talk about their personal experience in Sulapac. So Laura, please go ahead.
Thank you, Lorette. So let me share my presentation slides. All right. I hope you can see the slides okay.
Yes, thank you, Laura. Yes.
Good, thanks. So yes, lovely to be here. So I'm Laura Tirkkonen-Rajasoalo. I'm the co-founder and Chief Compliance Officer of Sulapac. And I'm here to tell you about our company's journey with the BBWR and the Design for Recycling guidelines. So a little bit about our company. So Sulapac is a material innovation company founded in 2016 in Helsinki, Finland, by two biochemists, so Suvi Haimi and myself. And Sulapac helps other companies to replace conventional plastic with sustainable material alternatives that reduce the carbon footprint, eliminate microplastic pollution, and advance the circular economy. So basically, our bio-based and biodegradable materials are safe for the people and planet, but still meet the very high quality standards by the many luxury brands. We serve several different business areas, for example, cosmetic packaging and pens, food service side, thermoforming, for example, packaging inserts and trays, and many other applications. And the materials can be converted with the existing plastic conversion machinery, including injection molding, extrusion, 3D printing, and thermoforming machinery. Today, we proudly collaborate with industry-leading manufacturers and many iconic brands across 3 continents. Some of our customers include, for example, Chanel, Shiseido, and Swan Cosmetics. So going back in years, traditionally, the end of life for our materials has been composting, industrial composting, and all of our materials are industrial compostable certified. However, depending on the end product, our customers were asking more and more for other end-of-life options as well. So some of the products could be either too big or too thick to be composted, or there were some other challenges for reaching bio-waste stream. So therefore, even before BBWR, we started testing other end-of-life options for our materials. And for example, tested mechanical recycling, which is possible for up to 6 times without losing significantly the mechanical properties. And then we also added reuse for some materials. They can be used up to 300 use cycles before going into, for example, other recycling. And then in the recent years, we also added chemical recycling by hydrolysis to the new options here, besides the mechanical recycling and composting. This was of course, good that we were starting to look into these options, because then it was about 2019 when we learned about the plans for the BBWR. And in the beginning, it really seemed like a total ban of this kind of new materials like Sulapac from the packaging market. And the leaked drafts on the BBWR, they were very much concentrating on the mechanical recycling of conventional oil-based plastics. So basically supporting the status quo. It still very much is, but I will tell you how it has changed over the years. The problem, of course, with the BBWR is that it is also driving the market towards very much monomaterial solutions, and favoring in that way also the main plastic types that are available in large volumes for recycling. It is not very favorable for composites, like the one in the picture shown here. The compostable applications, as Lorette was explaining, are very limited. For example, the fruit stickers and tea bags. And basically, it is forcing the industry that is providing packaging made of biodegradable polymers from their original compostable end-of-life purpose to now being material recycled. And of course, a lot of progress is happening on the recycling front for these materials, but there is, of course, immense pressure for scaling the recycling infrastructure. But going back to that time, 2019 and 2020, when we learned about the BBWR, we decided as a company to take more active role in the EU advocacy. So we were thinking that, is there something that we could do about it? And over the years, we had several meetings with the MEPs, with the Council, representatives of the Commission. We published many position papers, we wrote proposals to the drafts, and also made these parliamentary questions. And I'm showing an example on the next slide. So what was positive? That by being active, we were able to tell our story and be in direct dialogue with the policymakers. So the parliamentary questions are one way of influencing. So if you are in good terms with maybe your national members of the European Parliament, they can make this kind of questions to the European Commission, which are formal inquiries, and these questions allow the MEPs to hold the Commission accountable and seek clarification on policies and address issues affecting EU citizens. So they are part of the European Parliament's oversight role. Here's one example from 2022, when former MEP Henna Virkkunen was putting through this parliamentary question. Henna Virkkunen is nowadays a commissioner as well. So on our journey with the BBWR, we could see that there was some effect, of course, not only by us, but together with the efforts that were made. So the narrative changed in the drafted BBWR from a very negative one into a more positive one, if considering the bio-based and biodegradable packaging materials. However, at some point it became clear also for us that composting will not be enough. The feedback that we were getting that was giving us a clear signal that there will be a push for these materials to either become recyclable or largely not exist in the packaging market. So at that point, we understood that it's really important to demonstrate that we can become recyclable and also to be included among the PBWR categories for that to happen. So there was a lot of advocacy, and we also took part in the JRC, which is the Joint Research Center of the Commission. They had these hearings where they were asking for feedback on these PBWR category tables and taking active part in those. We and the others were seeing that the biodegradable plastics category was then finally added to the PBWR list of materials in the relevant annexes. So being part of those tables meant that we are also given a chance to define the design for recycling criteria for these biodegradable plastics through the CEN standardization group and the JRC. And now, of course, the work continues on the design for recycling criteria side. And at the same time, we as a whole industry need to drive forward the systemic change in recycling to become recyclable at scale by 2035. So a lot of work to be done still. Then a little bit about how did we as Sulapac demonstrate that we can be recyclable. We are already piloting closed loop model for recycling with our customers and partners. But in the future, Sulapac and similar materials should be separated also from the mixed plastic waste streams so that the recyclability at scale can truly be reached. And we started by field tests and testing at, for example, Pellenc and VTT, a research center in Finland, that our materials can be collected and sorted out from the mixed waste stream using, for example, near infrared. And we were able to show that when collected together, Sulapac materials do not interfere the current mechanical recycling of conventional plastics. And then, of course, after that, we were looking at the different processing methods for the actual recycling. For that, the recycling processing can be done by mechanical recycling. And we see that the chemical recycling is really an efficient way for these materials to keep the carbon in the loop. It is a very efficient process with high yields and low energy requirements. And the output material can also maintain the food contact quality, which is quite important in the applications that we have. For the chemical recyclability, we were testing that with many different processes and different companies. Basically, they are validating that the material can be processed through hydrolysis or some other way back to monomers that are suitable as feedstock for recycled biopolymers. Here one example from Futerro for their process. but as mentioned, there are several others as well. Last year, we also had a pilot with Burger King, where these Sulapac solid cups were reused in their restaurants up to 300 times, and then collected back for chemical recycling. So these are examples of the closed loops that demonstrate that this recycling is possible and can be enticing for the brands and customers. Then just quickly before I finish my part, about the Design for Recycling guidelines. So this is something that we are participating in the European Bioplastics Task Force and also in the CEN standardization subgroup for biodegradable plastics. And of course, we are also part of the national standardization group for packaging, and in that way can take part in the national discussion and voting. And in the CEN group for Design for Recycling guidelines, I see that it's really important that we get the input from the recyclers who know their processes and can tell that what kind of packaging they can handle. And of course, the recycling tests that we have also conducted with the different recyclers help in this work. Also, it is important to include the packaging customers' views. So we've been asking our customers that what are the important packaging features, and then evaluate that how do they affect the recyclability of the packaging. And it is important to include the compatible features in these tables, but also advise on the packaging features that are probably not going to be compatible in the future. And at the end, of course, these things have to happen at scale, and no one can do this alone. And for that, we have established a strong collaboration with different partners. For example, with TotalEnergies Scorpion, who already provide commercially available recycled biopolymers. And then we are also part of this EU project, ReBioCycle, that drives forward the sorting and recycling of bio-based plastics, and develops a portfolio of different bioplastic sorting and recycling technologies through these waste processor-based hubs around Europe, for example, in the Netherlands, Italy, and Spain. Our role in this EU project is to act as an end user. So we validate the obtained bio-based recyclates in cosmetic packaging applications, including evaluation of the quality and technical properties of the materials, material requirements. So with that, I end my presentation, and just as a take-home message, really get to know your regulatory landscape early on. You have better chances of influencing it when you start acting early. And please do take action because your view matters. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. I will continue. So you've heard a lot about the PPWR from Laura and the DFR as well. A little bit more detail about the DFR and in practice what we are doing, how it works. So firstly, I want to talk about CEN. You might all be aware of CEN. So it's the European Committee for Standardization. They work with a wide range of experts from across the value chain. So it's a multi-stakeholder collaboration in CEN. CEN is set up in technical committees working on specific topics. So, for example, the TC261, that's the technical committee that is important to us in terms of design for recycling, because they are focused on packaging. And then each technical committee has different working groups within them that focus on more specific topics, and a working group could have some informal subgroups that focus on even more specific topics. So in terms of CEN's pre-PPWR entry in force work, it's a long word, but basically before the PPWR entered into force, CEN was already working on design for recycling guidelines. So they were in this working group 10, subcommittee 4 of TC261. They were working on design for recycling for plastic packaging already. And this group was really created to answer to this mandate of 2022 from the Commission. This mandate basically was they started to draft a new European standards relating to design for recycling called EN 18120. And this mandate they received was focused on very specific polymers and plastic packaging. So PET bottles, PET rigid, PP, and PE rigid and flexible, PS, EPS, and XPS. And inside this draft standard of CEN, there are definitions, guidelines on sortability, recyclability guidelines, and recycling evaluation protocols for those specific packaging. Now, the general format of these design for recycling guidelines, you've seen also an empty table that was in Laura's presentation. So the general format that's used by CEN is that it's categorized, the packaging is categorized, what is the main body, what are attachments and decorations. And then there's the traffic light system that goes through and evaluates or assess the recyclability of these different items. So whether it's green, full compatible, yellow, tolerate or limited compatibility, and red, low compatibility, basically disqualifying it for recycling. That's the way in which CEN's structure is for evaluating design for recycling. But because the PPWR also listed other categories, as Laura has pointed out there, category 19, which is for the biodegradable plastics, but it also listed glass, paper, cardboard, cork, and these things that CEN was not working on at that moment or under that mandate. Because of this, it made sense that actually CEN, who has been working on the design for recycling already on plastic packaging, made sense that they continue to do this work, and also European Bioplastics supported the involvement of CEN in this. So the Commission did in December 2024, as I mentioned before, they asked CEN to co-develop design for recycling criteria for all these other materials that were not covered. Now, basically the plastic packaging, so the biodegradable plastic, is covered in the working group 10. So working group 10 is the same one that worked under the mandate for those other plastics. And then the other materials are all covered in the working group 3 of TC261. Now, for a drop-in plastic, bioplastics such as bio-based PE, drop-in meaning that it's basically the same polymer, but it's just coming from a bio-based source, is the polymer that's already out there and the infrastructure for recycling that exists. So the guidelines that were already created under the mandate will apply also for the bioplastic or bio-based polyethylene, for example. But for biodegradable plastics and for other predominant plastics that were not covered in this existing mandate covered by the CEN group, a new design for recycling had to be created or has to be created. So what have we done so far? As European Bioplastics, we created within European Bioplastics a task force called Task Force MATREC. It stands for Task Force Material Recycling. And that was to focus on this topic of material recycling of biodegradables. We had investigations, a lot of discussions, debates, votes, and brainstorming basically on how best to approach this. We communicated a lot also with CEN, with the convener of Working Group 10, with the European Commission, with projects, recyclers, sorters, and other stakeholders. We also published a paper that's showing that biodegradables can well be sorted using the near systems, existing near systems, and it's not affecting the recycling or recyclability of other plastic waste streams. We also asked to CEN, to TC261, to create a special subgroup within this Working Group 10 for focusing on packaging made from biodegradable plastics. And this was agreed, and this subgroup 9 was created. And European Bioplastics became a liaison organization of TC261 within CEN. And we work also internally within European Bioplastics to help speed up the completion of these technical specifications for design for recycling. Now, we also proposed a leader, originally Ulla Tromsdorf from Sulzer, to lead the subgroup 9. Sulzer is also a member of EUBP. Ulla unfortunately retired, but we've got a fantastic leader at the moment, Irina Jarolina, who might be on the call as well today, from Sulzer, who's taking over as leader of the subgroup 9 within CEN. We've encouraged our members and external stakeholders to join this working group 10 and to work with us in subgroup 9. And we've provided some guidance and advice to our own members who might not fit exactly within the current design for recycling groups or subgroups within CEN. We did explain to the Commission and to CEN that we cannot align with the state-of-the-art definition that's used in this current standard of EN 18120. And we agreed that we will therefore apply for new work item proposals. Work item proposals, normally you have to apply for something to be able to create a standard or a working agreement or something inside CEN. So we have agreed that we will apply for new work item proposals that will initially not form part of this standard, with the aim of one day forming part of it. And we also continue to support our projects. Many of you from the projects are on this call. And these projects are extremely important because we have a lot of work still to do to ensure the full recyclability and recycling infrastructure in the future for bioplastics. Now, the work that we've done within the subgroup 9 of CEN, we asked for these new work item proposals to be created so that we could work more officially on technical specifications. And we asked them, we submitted these new work item proposals to CEN earlier in the year, and they were approved and they were agreed. So now currently we're working on 4 technical specifications. They are the following. So we have a guideline for rigid packaging made of biodegradable plastics. We've got recyclability evaluation process for rigid packaging made of biodegradable plastics. Got a guideline for flexible packaging made of biodegradable plastics, and a recyclability evaluation process for flexible packaging made of biodegradable plastics. This is very similar to the structure also in this EN 18120 standard, where each polymer has its guidelines, but also the recyclability evaluation process. The difference there is just that those documents form part of the standard, different parts of the standard. So these guidelines are very similar to EN 18120. They generally, the guidelines, so these, the first and the third bullet point, they generally include traffic light tables that work on the red, green, yellow, and red schema for predominant polymers. And they will guide then eventually the packaging designer on which materials to use and which to avoid. Then the recyclability evaluation process, the second and the fourth, by the way, there are no numbers yet. These numbers are applied or given later in the process or just before publishing, basically. So the second and the fourth bullet point on recyclability evaluation is really also going to be similar to the EN 18120 recyclability evaluation. It really gives the steps for testing the compatibility of packaging with recycling. So predominant polymers. So within these technical specifications, going back within these 4 bullet points, within these 4 documents that we will be submitting for creating these new technical specifications, are actually some sub-tables or sub-information based on predominant polymers. So packaging made of specific predominant polymers. So we are working on the following. We're working on PLA rigid. We're working on aliphatic aromatic copolyesters flexible, and we're working on PHA rigid. These are the main topics also that were of interest in European Bioplastics and from the CEN group, working group 9. So, and in some cases, these tables that we're working on also refers to other biodegradable polymers or plastics. So it's very important to try to get involved, try to get form part of CEN subgroup 9 of working group 10, or become part of European Bioplastics to work on this. So the road ahead here, I think just 2 more slides, we're nearly running out of time. So we aim to complete these technical specifications within CEN as fast as possible. There's a target deadline end of December, which is what basically the Commission has asked. It is very, very difficult, I can be honest on that, but we're doing our best and people are working very hard on this. So subgroup 9 will submit these technical specifications to the working group 10 for comment, open it up to the rest of the working group, and then for voting approval basically inside the working group. And we need to ensure that the JRC in this comes back to the PPWR. So basically from CEN, the information goes to the JRC, and they must have this technical specification information in time so that they can respond to their deadlines to DG Environment. DG Environment will be working on the Delegated Act, which will eventually be published on the 1st of January 2028. So there's actually quite a lot still to be done, and that's why our deadline is very, very squeezed at the moment. So we're trying to keep a very good communication with our own members, but also with CEN, with the JRC, and with the Commission. We continue to gather information on recycling, and we continue to tap into and support the projects, the different projects that are out there and working on recycling. And we continue to create awareness on the support that we require for the sector. For example, support for recycling infrastructure, the obstacles we have, currently very small volumes. Also, Laura was referring to that, no level playing field in terms of biomass use for bioplastics, tight timelines, and some uncertainty because, of course, there's this 18-month window still for the member states to decide what can be compostable and the rest needs to be recycled. So my last slide, basically, I'm asking you, don't get caught off guard. Any predominant polymer that are not included in these documents will need to be added or may need to be added in the future revision of technical specification. However, it's uncertain at this moment how those new technical specification revisions, also in CEN, the new standard revisions of 18120, it's uncertain how that will be taken up into the Delegated Act in the future, because this is a legislation, a regulation, basically. And also keep in mind each technical specification revision, and the same with standards, even for longer, it takes at least a year, basically, to get new revisions approved, written up and approved. So please get involved either by joining European Bioplastics or joining the Working Group 10 of Subgroup 9. And you've got some detail here, which you will also have in your presentation afterwards. So